Hey there, folks. So this is Mr. Finley, and we're going to go over in this PowerPoint the basic theater terms that you're going to need to get around on stage without running into people and injuring yourself and others. So basic terms, just to understand what we do in here, the first and most important of them is ensemble, which is a term that we spent some time in class talking about. Ensemble is a group of actors, in our case actors, it could be musicians, it could be other artists, but in our case a group of actors working together to create an artistic whole rather than stressing individual players. That is to say that every single person is important. They are all bricks in the wall, and without any of them, the whole thing fails. A role, spelled R-O-L-E, refers to the character a particular actor performs. So when you're cast in a play, you are given a role. Usually then you are given the script. The script is the text of the play, including both stage directions and dialogue. So everything that happens on stage is dictated by a script. What the characters say is in there, but also what the characters do. It's all written in there. We call dialogue, the next item, when we have conversation among the characters. So in a script, you'll see a character's name, then what they say, then the other character and what they say. That's dialogue. But also in a script are what we call stage directions. They are instructions for the character's physical actions on stage. So when a character enters, or slaps someone, or kisses someone, that will all be written out in the stage directions in the script that you get. So those are the basic terms. They're pretty easy. You probably know those already, but you're going to hear them a lot, so I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page. Now, when you're on stage, we use some very specific terminology to describe what's there. So the parts of the stage include on stage. That is the part of the stage that is visible to the audience. Pretty obvious. This is in comparison to off stage, which is the part of the stage that the audience can't see. So behind the curtains or in the wings, which are what we call the sides of the stage. Included in the off stage area is what we call backstage. So this may be anywhere else in the theater, like the dressing rooms would be considered part of the backstage area. There's also what we call the auditorium, or sometimes we call it the house. This is the seating area for the audience. So whenever the audience comes in and takes their seat, they're sitting in the auditorium, or sometimes in a big theater, we call that auditorium the house. That is separate, of course, from the stage. And of course, the set is the stuff that we have on stage that creates the world of the play, the scenery that we use. Now, when you're on stage, we use a very specific language, and this is maybe the most important slide here, because it may be something that you're not aware of. We use a specific language to describe where you're moving on stage. When we say we want you to move up stage, that means we want you to move away from the side of the stage where the audience is, so away from the audience. Similarly, when we say to move down stage, we mean we want you to move toward the audience, away from the back wall. The reason we call it up and down stage is that stages used to be raked, which is our next term. The stage itself was slanted, so that the further away from the audience you were, the higher you were, and that the lowest part of the stage was right in front of the audience. That was because they didn't slant the audiences. Usually when you go into a theater now, you notice the audience platforms are slanted, so everyone can see the stage. When stages were first built, the audience was flat, and the stage was slanted or raked. And because of that, when you went away from the audience, you literally were going up stage. And when you came toward the audience, you were literally going down that slant, so you're going down stage. So even though we don't use raked stages much anymore, although sometimes you will see them, I have acted on raked stages before, we still use that term of going up stage to go away from the audience and down stage toward the audience. You'll hear this all the time. The other thing you hear all the time is what we call stage left or stage right. And this is always from the point of view of the actor. So as the actor is facing the audience, to your left is stage left, to your right is stage right. The reason why this is important is because whenever you're doing a show, some people are going to be on the stage facing the audience, and other people, like the director or the set designers, might be out in the audience facing the stage. And so what is left to the director may be right to the actor because they're facing opposite directions. Because the actor is so important, we always say left and right from their point of view. So, whenever you say stage left, it is to your left when you're standing on stage facing the audience. Whenever you say stage right, it means to go to your right on stage as you're facing the audience. We call it stage left and stage right, and upstage and downstage. Now, there are a few different types of stages. The ones that you are probably most familiar with we call proscenium stages. A proscenium is the square opening that divides the stage from the audience in a traditional theater space. So when you think of going into a big traditional space, sort of like DPAC or Memorial Auditorium, or some of the stages at Raleigh Little Theater, there's an audience in the auditorium, and then there's a big square opening on the other side of that is the stage. That opening is called the proscenium. When we talk about Greek theater, we'll figure out why it's called the proscenium. But we call a traditional theater like that a proscenium theater because that big square box, that big square opening is what defines the theater. And it's what most of us think of when we think of theater. Audience on one side, big opening, and the stage with the actors on the other side. But that is not the only sort of theater that there is. And in fact, I like performing in other sorts of theaters that get the actors closer to the audience. One of those is what we call a thrust stage, or what sometimes we call a three-quarter or three-quarters thrust stage. And this is a stage without a proscenium, with the audience on three sides. So literally the stage thrusts out into the audience. So instead of there being a big separation between actor and audience sits on three sides of the stage, and then there's a fourth side that is the back wall that is used for the set. This gets the actors really close to the audience. Some of the stages, for example, at Playmakers out in Chapel Hill, uses a thrust stage. Or if you've been to any of the shows at Burning Coal Theater Company in Raleigh, that uses a thrust stage as well. And the other sort of stage is what we call arena staging, or sometimes we call it theater in the round. And this is where the stage is in the middle and you've got audience on all sides. It gets the audience really close to the actors, and it really engages the audience with each other because besides seeing the actors, you're also looking at the audience across the stage from you. It makes it a little harder because you can have big set pieces because that would block the view from some of the audience, but it gets it really intimate. If ever you go and see a big show at an arena like the PNC Arena, used to be the RBC Center, anything like that, or the opening ceremonies for the Olympics, for example, those are in great big arena stages. There's also small ones as well. But those are the three types of stages: proscenium, thrust, or arena. Now, when we're moving around on stage, there's some terms that you should probably know as well. One of them we call cheating out. This just means that when you're on stage, we want the audience to see your face, not your butt. I don't care how interesting your butt is, your face is more interesting. So you always want to make sure that when you're standing on stage, you're turned just a little bit. Even if you're facing another actor who's on stage with you, you want to be turned just a little bit so the audience sees more of your front and less of your back. We call this cheating out, and we'll practice it in class. There's also this term countercross, which means moving in the opposite direction of an actor making a cross. A cross just means to cross the stage. So one actor might cross the stage, going from stage left to stage right, and then I might say, I'd like you to do a countercross to that, which just means as they're going from left to right, you're going from right to left. You will see that sort of movement a lot on stage. Two other terms are full back or full front, which is that we either facing or completely turned away from the audience. So if you're totally facing the audience, that's full front. If you're totally, so it's you're not facing the audience at all and it's just your back, we call that full back. Sometimes we use the term open to mean full front and closed to mean full back. I don't use those terms very much. And then in between those is profile. That is when you've turned sideways to the audience. And then we will demonstrate all of these in class.